We have an object that presents very advanced technology.
I'm a little nervous, I'll be honest. I feel like something extraordinary is going on.
What happens when an object that shouldn't exist begins responding to sounds older than recorded history? The Buga Sphere's reactions to ancient Sanskrit chants shattered scientific assumptions, blurred the line between matter and meaning, and exposed mysteries no technology can explain. If vibration is a language, what exactly is this artifact trying to say? Stay with us to know. The sphere that shouldn't exist. The discovery began far from any laboratory, deep in the quiet outskirts of Buga, Colombia, where a farmer stumbled upon a scene he couldn't explain. The ground showed a scorched patch, an area where the grass was gone, and the soil felt dry and brittle, almost as if something had drained every trace of moisture and life from the earth. In the very center of this lifeless circle lay an object that looked deceptively simple, a metallic sphere, roughly the size of a football, its surface perfectly smooth and gleaming under the morning light. At first glance, it resembled scrap from a fallen drone or a discarded industrial component, but closer examination made it immediately clear that this was nothing ordinary. The sphere showed no signs of impact, no seams, no bolts, no entry point, and no visible marks suggesting how it came to rest in that field. It was as if the object had been created without any recognizable method of construction. Even more unsettling was the fact that it displayed no damage whatsoever, despite resting in a burned patch of earth. Local authorities transported the sphere to a nearby university for preliminary inspection, and the moment researchers began taking readings, the situation escalated from curiosity to scientific alarm. The sphere emitted a low-frequency vibration described as faint yet powerful enough to disturb electronic equipment in the room. Devices flickered, sensors drifted, and even simple instruments behaved unpredictably whenever they neared the object. The vibration wasn't random. It persisted in a steady, measurable pattern, one that no one could match to known materials or devices. A second anomaly emerged from temperature testing. While the surrounding air remained warm, the surface of the sphere stayed cooler than the environment, refusing to absorb heat like normal metal. It maintained a constant surface temperature, defying basic thermodynamic expectations. The object felt almost insulated from the world around it, not inert, but actively resisting thermal exchange. As the investigation deepened, a magnetic sensor detected fluctuations that didn't correspond to any known material pattern. The readings shifted unpredictably, suggesting that the object generated a magnetic field unlike conventional metals or alloys. Each new test expanded the mystery instead of narrowing it. Researchers quickly realized they were facing something far beyond a misplaced piece of technology. Even its stillness seemed deceptive. Though the sphere sat quietly without producing sound or mechanical hum, instruments registered internal movement, something shifting inside with such subtlety that it could not be heard, only measured. It acted silent, yet undeniably active. Word spread quickly. The unusual combination of a seamless exterior, cool temperature, magnetic irregularities, and internal motion captured the attention of specialists across the region. Soon, the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM, joined the investigation, sending experts to examine the object directly. Among them was Dr. Carlos Muñoz, one of the first high-level physicists to analyze the artifact. His early assessment was cryptic, yet telling. He described the internal design as an engineering language that doesn't belong to our era. Even with advanced scanning methods, the sphere resisted full interpretation. Initial imaging revealed intricacies that only deepened the puzzle. Beneath its flawless outer layer, researchers discovered internal elements of unexpected complexity, but the tools struggled to penetrate clearly enough for a complete view. What could be seen hinted at something deliberately constructed, yet utterly unlike any known technological system. But as soon as researchers began exploring its inner structure, the sphere proved even more impossible than they imagined. Engineering beyond any known era. One of the most striking discoveries came when researchers used advanced magnification tools. Under extreme close-up, the sphere's outer layer revealed what appeared to be microscopic wiring. Arranged in patterns so fine, that even electron microscopes had difficulty following their full paths. These tiny structures were clearly engineered, not naturally formed. They wove through the material like an internal nervous system, yet they were so minuscule that tracing them was nearly impossible. To the team, it was evidence of a construction process well beyond contemporary capability. Further scans showed something even more astonishing. The sphere wasn't a single piece of metal, but consisted of 3 nested shells, each forged from a different metallic composition. Between these layers sat an unknown insulating material, one that resisted classification and did not match any substance listed in scientific databases. This layered design suggested purpose, but nothing about it matched human manufacturing techniques. At the sphere's center sat the most baffling feature of all, the core, which resembled a chip or a nucleus. It held a crystalline texture, yet displayed patterns that looked almost organic, as though it blended biological geometry with technological structure. Scientists could not determine whether it functioned as a processor, an energy reservoir, or something entirely unprecedented. All they knew was that it didn't match any known category. Beyond its internal architecture, the object behaved in ways that challenged physics itself. Researchers noticed that when people approached the sphere, its position shifted slightly, almost as if reacting to proximity. These movements were extremely small, but consistent enough to be measured. Engineers monitoring the behavior reported that it didn't roll in a normal way. Instead, it seemed to glide or slide through air, making contact with surfaces only lightly. It was as though the sphere selectively altered how much mass it carried. This observation led to one of the most shocking measurements taken in the early studies. Under controlled conditions, the sphere displayed an 81% reduction in inertia. To put it simply, the object acted as though it could manipulate its own mass, becoming lighter or heavier depending on circumstances researchers had not yet identified. No known mechanism could explain how an object could deliberately adjust inertia without a power source or moving parts. Its thermal properties were equally abnormal. The sphere emitted a steady cooling effect, losing around 100 watts of thermal energy per hour, even though it showed no visible power source and no internal systems capable of releasing heat. It didn't warm up from surrounding air temperature. Instead, it maintained an unnaturally stable coolness, almost as though it actively rejected heat. As news of the discovery spread, online communities exploded with theories. Some suggested the sphere was an alien probe. Others believed it was a military prototype, or perhaps an ancient artifact, whose technology exceeded modern understanding. A few more speculative voices proposed ideas such as a quantum battery, or even an organic machine. While many of these theories were extreme, the data coming from independent labs confirmed that the sphere behaved unlike any known object. These external labs noted the same strange effects: mass fluctuations, energy emissions, and a constant magnetic hum that persisted regardless of conditions. One engineer remarked that the sphere expanded and contracted microscopically, almost as if it were breathing. There were no audible sounds, no motion the naked eye could detect. Yet, precise instruments recorded rhythmic micro-movements inside. The environmental impact added another layer to the mystery. The original field where the object had been found still showed no regrowth of grass or microbial life, months after the discovery. Soil samples revealed extreme moisture depletion, but crucially, no radiation. The absence of radiation eliminated typical explanations involving contamination or nuclear effects. Scientists floated the idea that the sphere might create some type of ionized field, stripping the surrounding area of moisture. But even that was speculation. Nothing matched known processes. Within the scientific community, the term invisible energy extraction began circulating in notes and discussions. Others simply called it the Columbian Enigma. Theories multiplied, yet none provided a complete explanation. The sphere seemed both mechanical and alive, quiet, responsive, and undeniably aware of its environment. And as one researcher famously said while watching the live monitor reflect the sphere's steady electromagnetic pulse, "We're not studying it, it's studying us." What no one realized was that the most startling reaction was still waiting, one that would break the boundary between sound and matter. When physics reached its limit, Once the sphere was fully under the control of major research institutions, testing shifted from basic observation to deeper analysis. What scientists found pushed the limits of physics into territory no one had anticipated. Inside the controlled facilities at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, the research teams began documenting behaviors that challenged every conventional model they relied on. One of the earliest shocks came during a motion study. Technicians placed the sphere on an inclined surface meant for measuring kinetic resistance. At first, the object behaved normally, resting motionless as expected. But moments later, the sphere unexpectedly rolled uphill on the gently inclined plane without any external force. Researchers attempted the test multiple times, adjusting variables, changing surface textures, and modifying environmental conditions. The results varied. Sometimes the sphere remained still, and sometimes it defied gravity. The inconsistency troubled the team. It was as if the sphere decided when to obey gravitational pull and when to ignore it. Thermal imaging provided even more complexity. No matter the surrounding temperature, the sphere maintained a surface that stayed cooler than the environment. When sealed inside an insulated chamber, isolated from airflow and external temperature differences, the object still created a perfect circular heat gradient. It was coldest at its core and warmest at the outer edges, forming a symmetrical pattern that repeated precisely in every test. Some engineers suggested it might function as a form of heat sink, converting thermal energy into something else entirely, yet the lack of any visible power source made the idea impossible to validate. Then came the material tests, which dismantled any hopes of classifying the artifact as a known alloy. Using X-ray diffraction, researchers attempted to map its structural composition, only to find that the atomic lattice didn't match any metal documented in the periodic table. Instead, the lattice showed irregularities consistent with materials formed under extreme pressure, the kind found inside stars or through manufacturing processes beyond anything currently achievable by humans. The conclusion shocked the team. The sphere's material structure did not originate from any known natural or industrial method. Cutting into the object proved completely futile. Scientists attempted diamond-tipped drills, laser ablation, and even high-precision cutting tools designed for aerospace materials. Every method failed. The outer layer was not simply strong, it behaved as though it was actively resisting interference, rejecting any attempt to breach it. The deeper researchers looked, the stranger the internal structure appeared. Under enhanced electron microscopy, the internal layers revealed 3 metallic shells, each composed of different alloys, separated by unknown insulation. Even more surprising were the inner threads that emitted faint photonic bursts, resembling a kind of signal or response. Some physicists noted that these bursts were strangely similar to biological neuron firing, though no one dared claim the sphere was alive. However, this observation fueled speculation among fringe scientists who suggested the object might not have been built but instead grown, merging technological and biological design principles. Behind closed doors, a smaller group of researchers pursued an unusual angle: sound. Placing the sphere inside a sound-isolated chamber, they introduced controlled vibrational frequencies. They noticed subtle electromagnetic fluctuations whenever specific tones were played. The signals were faint but unmistakable. This raised a new question. Was the sphere sensitive to sound, or was it reacting to something deeper? Resonant frequency. For weeks, teams ran simulations and tested various frequencies, trying to map the sphere's reaction patterns. Nothing in its responses aligned with ordinary matter. Everything it did was deliberate, rhythmic, and tied to interactions no one had predicted. Then came the turning point. During a routine calibration, an intern spoke inside the chamber, completely by accident, and the sphere's readings shifted immediately. When the intern stopped speaking, the readings faded. It was the first undeniable evidence that human voice affected the sphere. This accidental discovery would open the doorway to the most astonishing reaction yet, one that involved ancient sound, forgotten knowledge, and resonance older than recorded history. And when scientists followed this unexpected clue, the sphere reacted to something far older and far more precise than any modern experiment could have anticipated: the Sanskrit reaction. The breakthrough that shifted the entire investigation didn't begin with a major experiment, but with a detail almost buried in the data logs. Deep inside the sensor records, analysts noticed that the sphere's electromagnetic field shifted whenever human voices were present. During normal calibration inside the chamber, a research assistant had spoken casually near the equipment. The sound wasn't part of a test, yet afterward, the data showed a faint but perfectly rhythmic pulse inside the sphere that matched the tone and pacing of the assistant's voice. This pattern wasn't noise, it was a response. That realization forced the team to rethink their approach. If the sphere reacted to voice, was it responding to language or simply to vibration? The question divided the group. Some believed it had to be resonance, while others argued that languages have distinct sound geometries that could matter. But the readings remained subtle, so no one could settle the debate. Then a graduate student, fascinated by the idea of harmonic frequency, suggested something unconventional: testing Sanskrit. Known for its precise phonetic resonance, Sanskrit has long been studied by linguists and acousticians who believe its syllables naturally produce symmetrical vibrational patterns. Most of the scientific team dismissed this idea as mythological romanticism. Still, given the lack of progress, they agreed to try. The first session took place under complete isolation. The chamber fell silent while a recording of the Gayatri mantra was played through a low-frequency transducer. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, as the chant progressed into its second verse, the monitors began to flicker. Electromagnetic readings spiked, showing sudden, structured shifts. A faint shimmer spread across the sphere's surface, subtle but real enough to freeze everyone in the room. When the audio stopped, the shimmer faded instantly, and the energy readings returned to normal. At first, the team assumed it was coincidence, but when the test was repeated, the response occurred again. Same chant, same harmonics, same reaction. Soon, the scientists realized that the sphere responded only to Sanskrit mantras. When they played Western music, tonal chanting from other cultures, or even pure white noise, the sphere remained motionless and completely unresponsive. But when the Sanskrit frequencies returned, the internal energy began shifting once more. Sometimes the object glowed faintly. Other times, the room vibrated with a low resonance that felt like standing beside a massive engine buried deep below the surface. It wasn't loud, but it carried through the floor and into bone. To remove the possibility of human interference, the team replaced all recordings with pure digital frequencies that matched the harmonic structure of the mantra. The response was identical. The sphere did not care whether the sound was produced by a human voice or a speaker. It reacted to the geometry of vibration, not the meaning of the words. Dr. Munoz summarized his findings succinctly in his notes. It seems to recognize the geometry of vibration, not linguistic meaning. This statement shifted the entire direction of the research. The object wasn't interpreting speech. It was synchronizing with specific vibrational structures encoded in the mantra. By this point, the tests had grown too large to stay secret. Requests for observation poured in from international research groups, and soon clips leaked online. In one viral clip, a technician hummed a single Sanskrit syllable near the sphere, causing it to emit a faint blue luminescence. Thousands of viewers claimed this proved ancient languages were connected to universal physics. Others accused the team of faking the footage, though the raw data spoke for itself. No matter what commentators believed, the scientists understood one thing clearly. The sphere was reacting to an ancient vibrational pattern with precision, consistency, and intention. This revelation pushed them to schedule a formal demonstration, a controlled experiment that would be witnessed, recorded, and verified by multiple parties. And the event that followed would change everything. Because when the world finally watched the sphere respond to Sanskrit, the reaction was far more powerful and far more intelligent than anyone expected. The day the sphere awoke. On the morning of the scheduled live demonstration, the atmosphere inside the research facility felt unusually heavy. Technicians, physicists, and observers took their positions around the reinforced chamber where the sphere rested. Multiple cameras were set up, instruments were calibrated, and the team prepared to document the first fully verified test of the sphere's reaction to Sanskrit chanting. No one expected anything dramatic. The goal was simply to reproduce the earlier responses for the record. But within minutes, the experiment veered into territory no one had anticipated. As the recording of the Gayatri mantra began, the familiar hum of the transducers filled the room. The sound wasn't loud, it moved subtly through the space, vibrating through the air, the floor, and the steel supports surrounding the chamber. Initially, the readings showed normal fluctuations, the kind the sphere had displayed during previous tests. But then, one of the monitors began flashing red. The electromagnetic field around the sphere was suddenly spiking at a rate far beyond anything recorded before. The chant continued. Temperature sensors inside the chamber showed a rapid drop, several degrees in just seconds. As the room grew tense, everyone's attention snapped to the sphere itself. Its surface had begun to emit a soft bluish glow, faint but unmistakably synchronized with the mantra's rhythm. The pulses weren't random. They matched the chant's harmonic intervals with exact timing. Technicians stared in disbelief. The sphere wasn't just responding, it was synchronizing. Then the interference began. Lights flickered, monitors distorted, and devices with metallic surfaces began to vibrate softly. It felt as though the entire room had locked into the same frequency as the chant. Someone whispered, "This is insane," as data streamed through the screens at impossible speeds. The sphere glowed steadily now, pulsing in perfect rhythm. Instruments confirmed what the scientists were seeing. The patterns were not noise or accidental distortion. These were structured energy signatures repeating with mathematical precision, almost as though the object was broadcasting or communicating. Dr. Munoz, who insisted the test remain brief for safety, ordered the audio to be shut off. The moment the sound stopped, the glow faded. Within seconds, the temperature stabilized, the field collapsed to normal, and the machinery quieted. The entire phenomenon had lasted less than a minute. But what the data revealed would shake the team far more than the glowing display. Frame-by-frame review of the footage revealed a pattern. Each time the chant reached its high tonal peaks, the sphere's energy output intensified with perfect alignment. The object wasn't just reacting, it displayed something close to recognition of the vibrational structure. Some researchers proposed that Sanskrit's phonetic geometry, the highly symmetrical patterning of its sounds, might be responsible. Others dismissed this as mystical interpretation. Yet no one could explain why other languages, noises, or tones had failed completely while the Sanskrit chant consistently succeeded. Within days, clips of the event spread online, sparking fierce debate among physicists, linguists, and spiritual communities. Some argued that the demonstration proved ancient civilizations understood resonance physics at a deeper level than modern science. Others warned against romanticizing what could be a dangerous or unknown energy mechanism. Whatever the interpretation, the moment the sphere glowed in time with the chant became one of the most replayed scientific clips on the internet. The university released an official statement labeling the results anomalous but worthy of further investigation. Privately, however, many members of the research team admitted they were shaken. The sphere had demonstrated selectivity, intentionality, and what seemed disturbingly close to awareness. One observer later remarked, "It wasn't reacting to us, it was remembering something." The demonstration had proven one thing beyond debate. For the first time in scientific history, an object responded in measurable, intelligent patterns to an ancient human chant. The boundary between physics and meaning had been crossed. But the aftermath that followed would prove even stranger. The sphere didn't need the chant anymore. The object that began to remember. Weeks after the dramatic demonstration, the research facility remained sealed, its access restricted to a small number of authorized personnel. The Buga Sphere, now at the center of global attention, sat inside its containment chamber under continuous surveillance. Most of the original research team had been reassigned, and quiet rumors circulated that the project had shifted into government supervision. Official updates were minimal, but those working closest to the object knew that the sphere had begun displaying behaviors that defied every framework established so far. The most significant discovery emerged quietly, almost unnoticed at first. The sphere had started emitting faint pulses even in complete silence. These pulses were extremely subtle, detectable only by sensitive equipment, but they were consistent. More unsettling was the realization that their structure matched the harmonic intervals of the Gayatri Mantra. Somehow, the sphere was repeating the vibrational patterns it had been exposed to weeks earlier. It was no longer reacting to sound. It was producing its own resonance, mirroring the chant as if it had memorized it. Environmental effects continued to complicate the investigation. Beneath the lab, geologists detected elevated ionization levels in the soil, similar to the readings found in the original discovery site. Plants near the containment area exhibited signs of dehydration, wilting in ways that mirrored the barren field where the sphere was found. Once again, no radiation was present, leaving researchers without a conventional explanation. Preliminary findings indicate an unprecedented form of vibrational interaction between matter and sound. Beyond this, they provided no elaboration. Their silence only amplified public speculation. Online discussions expanded into thousands of threads. Some insisted the sphere was a seed from another form of intelligence. Others believed it was a probe, measuring human awareness or environmental conditions. Many argued that the sphere's synchronization with Sanskrit suggested knowledge older than written history. The footage from the demonstration continued circulating, with people analyzing waveform overlays, acoustic geometry, and the sphere's faint blue glow frame by frame. Inside the lab, the air was heavy. Several technicians reported faint tones near the chamber, even in the absence of any audio system. The frequency was low, barely perceptible, yet carried a distinct measured rhythm. Slow, steady, and unmistakably regular, almost like a heartbeat. When one researcher whispered near the reinforced glass, the readings jumped again. Whatever the sphere was doing, it had not stopped. However, things were about to take an even wilder turn as more and more theories continued to emerge, echoes of an ancient resonance. Even after the live demonstration, the Buga Sphere continued to astonish the world. Its influence seemed to extend far beyond simple observation, as though the object was subtly rewriting its surroundings on a molecular level. Media coverage erupted. Headlines dubbed it the artifact that listens, the singing machine, and Columbia's quantum enigma, reflecting both fascination and unease. The global public couldn't decide whether it was miracle, menace, or mystery. Debates erupted across television panels and online forums alike. Physicists argued heatedly over the plausibility of negative mass theory, while linguists speculated that vibrational syntax in ancient languages might hold untapped power. Spiritual leaders claimed the sphere confirmed that Sanskrit represented the original frequency of creation. Skeptics, meanwhile, accused the university of staging the effects, alleging hidden LED lights or magnetic interference. But when the institution released a segment of the raw EMF data, even the most vocal critics fell silent. The numbers were precise, displaying structure and regularity too clean to be fabricated. For Dr. Munoz, the turning point came while reviewing a spectrogram of the sphere's energy emissions. He noticed a startling pattern. It mirrored the geometry of the Shri Yantra, an ancient Hindu symbol representing the union of physical and spiritual planes. No programming or external manipulation could explain it. That single discovery left the team in stunned silence for nearly an hour. Was it coincidence? Or had the sphere somehow internalized the cosmic geometry encoded within the Gayatri Mantra itself? Security around the artifact intensified. Entry now required biometric clearance, and outside the facility, protests erupted. Some demanded transparency, while others claimed the sphere was divine evidence suppressed by academia. It was no longer solely about matter, energy, or thermodynamics. The sphere was engaging in something akin to communication. It had heard humanity's oldest structured language and responded in a measurable, deliberate way. The meaning, or intent, remained unclear, but one fact was undeniable. The object had crossed the boundary between passive observation and interaction. Weeks passed. The lab remained sealed, and updates were scarce. The Buga Sphere rested in isolation, under observation by a small, authorized team. Most of the original research staff had been reassigned, though rumors suggested the project had quietly transitioned into government supervision. Data accumulated at staggering rates, filling entire servers, yet no one could fully interpret it. Every test raised new questions. Every confirmed measurement contradicted existing theories. Then came the most remarkable revelation. The sphere now emitted faint pulses in total silence, without chanting or external vibrations. The energy patterns were subtle but consistent, structured in cycles that matched the harmonic intervals of the Gayatri mantra. Somehow, the object had memorized the vibration. It was no longer merely reacting, it was reproducing the chant autonomously. Physicists speculated residual resonance, self-sustaining quantum oscillation. No explanation fit completely. Yet those who spent extended periods near the sphere reported something beyond science. One technician claimed he heard his name whispered through a monitor's static. Another said the sphere's pulse accelerated when humans entered the room, as if it could detect attention or presence. Outside scientific circles, interpretations flourished. Some saw evidence that ancient languages were encoded with the same mathematical principles governing the universe. Others considered it proof of a subtle link between sound, consciousness, and intention, a bridge modern science rarely acknowledges. Some even proposed that the sphere acted as a cosmic mirror, reflecting the vibrational essence of humanity in ways previously unimaginable. Eventually, UNAM issued a brief statement. The Buga Sphere remains under study. Preliminary data indicates an unprecedented form of vibrational interaction between matter and sound. Beyond that, silence. Yet the story refused to fade. Scientists were left in awe, but the public's imagination continued to run wild. To many, the sphere became more than an anomaly. It became a symbol of rediscovery, a reminder that some mysteries are meant to be experienced in fragments rather than fully solved. Somewhere in that sealed Colombian laboratory, the Buga Sphere continues to hum quietly, pulsing with the ancient chant, a rhythm older than recorded history. And if you listen closely, it almost feels as though the universe itself is trying to remember the words. As the sphere pulses in silence, the world watches and wonders, could humanity ever truly understand an intelligence that listens, learns, and remembers without a single word spoken? Share your thoughts in the comments below.